I'm Marc Appleman, and I'm here to talk about Sport Magazine and the Sport Archives, and also about what we're looking to do. We've engaged Blackhawk to try and sell the archive. And let me give you a little background first about myself. Is I've been involved in sports and sports media throughout my career. Started out as a sports writer for the LA Times, and then moved on to Sports Illustrated for Kids, where I became an editor, and then got involved in the whole digital world of sports and headed up the first Fox Sports website, AOL site, which became the biggest sports destination at the time, and then worked in a number of startups, including Active.com. Moved on to ESPN, where Sports Nation became my baby across multiple platforms, and then again worked for a couple of startups. Ended up for 8 years as the CEO of SABR, Society for American Baseball Research, where we really delved into the analytics, sort of think about an organization for Moneyball, and we worked closely with Major League Baseball on that. And then over the last couple of years, I've been involved in a number of new ventures, including Sport Magazine, which, to sort of go back a while, I grew up with Sport Magazine and actually got it every year as a holiday gift, and used to cut out the pictures, put them up on my wall, and remembered this magazine for years. And then a couple of years ago, I re-engaged with Wayne Parrish, who's a longtime friend of mine, and Wayne and a group had bought the assets and the archive to Sport Magazine and Inside Sports Magazine in 2000, and had tried to do a number of different things with them, including opening up a gallery, but hadn't really taken advantage of what's these tremendous assets that we have. So we started talking about what we could do with them and how valuable they could be, and how we thought there were a lot of groups and possibly individuals out there who would be interested in them. So to give you a little history and background on Sport Magazine, it started in 1946, which was actually 8 years before Sports Illustrated. And it was really the first sports magazine. It was a monthly that had incredible color photos. It had the top writers and top photographers of that era. And they also dealt a lot more with issues and with personalities and with off the field and off the court stories, because it was a monthly, so they didn't have to really report the scores and the games and everything like that. The magazine was incredibly popular for years. It went, as I said, from 1946 to 2000. And there are, oh gosh, there's about 12,000 articles. I know there are 697 covers and over 150,000, really between about 150 and 175,000 images. And the thing about the images that makes them incredibly special and valuable is that most of them have never been seen, because it was pre-digital days. So if you did a photo shoot, for instance, on Jackie Robinson, and you had 55 great photos of him with his family and off the field in the backyard, in the magazine, if 5, 6, 7, I think maybe 8 grand, you still had 47, 48 great photos that had never been seen or used. And the majority of these photos have not been seen or used. Now, the articles obviously appeared, but even many of the articles, if you didn't happen to read them or still have that issue, you don't have them at this point, because nothing was put online and nothing was, digitized during that time. To give a sense of the specifics of it, Sport really focused on the 4 major sports: baseball, football, basketball, and hockey, but also, at least at the beginning, a lot on horse racing, which was huge at the time, and on golf and tennis, and through the years continued golf and tennis. But as I mentioned, they also were sort of ahead of the time. So there were a lot of articles and issues that were devoted to women in sports way before that was a big thing. to race relations in sports, to contracts, free agency before free agency became a really, big issue. So, and they were written by really the top writers of the day. I mean, most of them are a who's who of writers you'd recognize, writers, going back as far as, Grantland Rice to somebody like, Tony Kornheiser. And the photographers also were famous, and they were well known for a lot of their sort of set up color photos with beautiful, backgrounds, the field, the stadium, and everything like that. Some of the individuals who were, really focused on, we have a lot of photos of Muhammad Ali. Probably in terms of NBA, I think the most photos were Wilt Chamberlain, the guard Bob Cousy of the Red Sox. Obviously, have a lot of Red Sox from the years when they were great, Yankees from when they were great, Dodgers, Giants, all those teams. But a lot of NBA going, as forward as Julius Erving, and as I mentioned, sort of Bill Russell. We had a lot on baseball, which is really big. Have a lot of incredible images on Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Sandy Koufax, Roberto Clemente. I mean, really goes sort of across the years, in terms of hockey, Bobby Orr, Tony Esposito, football, everyone from a lot of Joe Namath when he was with the Jets, and then, going to Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Johnny Unitas, golf, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer. I mean, you sort of name it, sport was there to sort of do that. Tennis, going back to Billie Jean King, Jimmy Connors, John McEnroe, Chris Evert. So really a lot there. Boxing, as I mentioned, Muhammad Ali, Joe Louis. So the photos and the articles, really stand out. One of the other things sport was sort of known for were their first-person profiles that were done by great writers, and then first-person stories that were actually written by the athletes themselves. There are probably about 60 of those, and that was something that they did way before Players Tribune ever came about, and having players sort of write their own opinions and their own stories. So sport really did offer a lot, through the years in terms of that. One of the things you might remember them most for was from 1955 through, I think it was the early 80s, Sport Magazine presented the MVPs to the winners in the 4 major sports. So for the Super Bowl, World Series, NBA titles, and that was called the Sport MVP. And usually a car was given out with that. There's a famous photo of Johnny Unitas sort of laid out on the hood of a Corvette, which he got for winning the MVP in the NFL championship game. So, there are a lot of memories, people who grew up with Sport Magazine. I think it was a passionate time, for sports. And as I said, sport was very valuable. And we feel like these archives are incredibly valuable and could be used, in many different ways, and could be made to be relevant in the society we're in now, where nostalgia is big, but also sort of tying together things where you have different eras and different, sports. I mean, one of the things that I've sort of thought about in terms of where the value could be is the comparison between eras and ages. So for instance, if you show that Mike Trout has a WAR in the high 80s and Mickey Mantle had a WAR is a statistic used in baseball analytics to sort of show where players ranked against each other. So if Mickey Mantle's around 100 and Mike Trout's in the high 80s, someone growing up now who knows Mike Trout will think, whoa, Mickey Mantle must have been pretty good, because his is even higher than Mike Trout, who they think is the greatest player around. And I think a lot of the articles and photos also lend themselves to discussions and different ways in which you compare different eras, different teams, different players. And I think in closing, basically, we have a lot of different players, a lot of teams, a lot of eras. We have sport by decade, sport by region. So I think there are a lot of ways that it could be very, successful. And once again, as I mentioned, so we've engaged Blackhawk to work with us to try and sell this archive, which we think is probably the most valuable, or is the most valuable, sports archive now out there.